another episode of the HCDVCC Board Spotlight. My name is Rebecca Council. I am the Social Media and Digital Media Director. And today we have another board member with us. We have Antreece. Antreece, give us your full name and tell us what you do for a living.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is when you're watching this.
Yeah.
So, my name is Dr. Antreece Badget. I work for Houston Community College. I am the interim college operations officer. And so, what that means is every day I monitor a budget of about $16 million. I'm also responsible for assisting with enrollment development in collaboration with the Dean of Student Services. I also, we have about 9 buildings at one campus at Southeast. And then at the East Side campus, we have about 9 buildings. And then at the Felix Fraga Academic Center, which is off of Navigation, we have 2 buildings at that campus. So it's about 10, 11 buildings that I oversee, as well as I also teach African American history, and humanities. So I wear a lot of different hats.
You sure do.
I do.
And so tell us what you do with the board for HCDVCC. What position do you hold?
So as far as the board is concerned, I am at this time, I'm just a member of the board. But previously, I was a board president. So when we went through like a transition, I happened to be on the board for that. And I've been on the board maybe since about 2011. And I love being on the board, And so, and the reason why I say that, Rebecca, is I'm able to connect what I do during the day with my students and my colleagues, as well as the work that we do on the board. And the way that I'm able to connect it is along with those titles that I gave you, right? Probably since maybe 2007, I started doing work with the Office of Institutional Equity, and which is where Title IX and all of those type issues are housed. And so because I also am the founding director of Africana African American Studies and Women and Gender Studies, I've always been able to reach out to our community partners and bring people in and speak. And that's actually how I got involved with the council. Was I have a mutual friend who is a relative of Thesha Jenkins. So Thesha came and spoke, and then Barbie came the next year in October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and spoke. And the work that the Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council does has just really, really, really resonated with me, because I myself am an adult child survivor of domestic violence. And it wasn't until I heard Barbie and Thesha speak about it and the post-traumatic stress and trauma that you get from growing up in those environments that it really helped me to move into my purpose and understand my why, because I was able to connect those dots. And every time that we've had speakers from the council come and speak to our students, Rebecca, it's amazing how many of my students will come to me and say, Dr. Badget, I didn't realize it, but this is what I'm growing up. This is what I grew up with, or this is the relationship that I'm in right now. And it's males, females, heterosexual, homosexual. It's everybody, right? Yeah. Trauma is everywhere, and violence is everywhere. And I just think I used to say I think, but I know that's a part of my purpose, in that if I can help people to connect the dots and understand why we do the things that we do and how it impacts us, I know I can help you get to the next step to be a successful, thriving human. I used to say a citizen, just a human.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we're all here to do, is to help one another.
Yeah, and it's interesting because people who grew up in abusive relationships, whether they're watching their parents fight or they're watching, one parent beat on another one, or even themselves, they just think it's the way that it is, right? All
Mhm.
families are like that. And so they don't know that it's wrong until they hear somebody say that it's wrong. And so a lot of times, um, people come out of, you know, knowing somebody who can help them as a scary situation. So thank you for the work that you do,
So
definitely.
I know this is a conversation, so this is what I tell people. Uh so there are three of us, three siblings. I'm the only female. I have two younger brothers. When I tell you we are classic textbook examples of what happens when you grow up in a violent home. Textbook. And that, thank God I'm the child or the sibling that just has no tolerance for it. I mean, if you raise your voice, I mean, I'm like, I'm gone. Like, so I'm in this is my
Yeah.
second marriage, my last marriage. I'm not marrying anybody else. But when my husband Terrence and I got together, I would literally say, Rebecca, probably for the first 6 years, I said, oh, I know you're going to leave. Because I was accustomed to people leaving,
Right.
because I would
Yeah.
say, you can't raise your voice at me. You can't treat me like this, because I witnessed it. And unfortunately, um, and also I spent my formative years with my grandparents, and they had a very loving relationship. Uh, and it was difficult because when I
Mhm.
first went to live with them, so for the first 2 years, I couldn't even sleep at night because it was
Wow.
so quiet.
Oh
Because they
yeah,
didn't argue. How?
because you were used to hearing that. It's like a baby, right?
Yes. And so I would get up in the middle of the night and turn the TV on. So I'm gonna date myself. So this is when Johnny Carson was on, and they would play the national anthem,
Yeah.
and I would have to go to sleep, because if not, the TV would go off, right?
Yeah.
And then my grandmother asked me a couple of times. She said, "Why are you up watching the TV?" And then finally, I told her, I said, it's too quiet. So she said, we're gonna buy you a radio, baby. Because again, we didn't have
Yeah.
all these zillion stations that we have now. You definitely couldn't
Yeah.
stream anything. So I would go to sleep listening to the radio because I needed noise. Unfortunately, my brothers did not have that opportunity. So they grew up thinking that it was okay to be abusive, say abusive things to women, and be abusive.
Hmm.
And that has followed them their entire life. And it's sad, but I know both sides of it, right? As much as
Right.
I love them, they're my brothers. I have to acknowledge, what
Yeah.
they do. And it's not everybody. And I want to believe that just like I was able to say, no, I'm going to put a stop to it, maybe one day they will too. But that's the
When they're ready.
reality of it. And that goes back to answering your question of why I do what I do on the board. Because I
Hmm.
love my brothers, I love my parents, but that doesn't mean that everything that they did was right.
Yeah.
So I just don't want anybody else, if I can help it, to suffer and go through it. And so I try to be that ray of light for people.
Well, you are definitely a ray of light for our board. We enjoy having you. So glad that
Thank
you've
you.
stayed around so long.
I'm not going anywhere. I like to ask questions.
So when we talk about, because I know that somebody is saying that you're their inspiration, who would be an influential person in your life or people in your life and why?
Ah, so the first person that comes to mind is my grandmother.
Hmm.
So my grandmother was born in 1919, and she was married 5 times
Wow.
because she had very low tolerance for foolishness. So I'm gonna keep it clean. I'm just gonna call it foolishness. You know, if we
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
very low tolerance. And so the grandfather that I knew that she was living with, she married him twice. So I guess that means he got it right the second time.
Yeah.
I was also influenced by my mom in that although she was married to my dad, um, 63, 64 years, something like that.
Wow.
And the marriage was abusive. She always told me, Antreece, don't ever let a man hit you. If you ever let a man hit you, you will never be the same. And so I appreciate her putting that into me. And when I was in a relationship that could have been abusive, she drove to California and brought me back to Houston and said, we're not going to do that. And I'm going to send you to your grandparents because I know they won't let anybody come in the house. Because it
Mhm.
was kind of like my grandparents were like my safe haven, my
Right.
sanctuary. Uh, and then my granddaughter, she is definitely influential and a ray of light for me because she's the future and she's hope, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I hope my husband is in the other room because I don't want him to get the big head. If he hears this, we're gonna delete it. But I'm joking. He's been very influential in that he has allowed me to heal some of those wounds of the past, right?
Yeah.
And he has also taught me that you never get too old to trust
Mhm.
because I really did have trust issues. So, he's like, I ain't going nowhere. I'm like, yes, you are. And I was like, huh, it's been 11 years. I guess you're not going anywhere. And then I
Yeah.
have my wonderful students, right? And so, although I teach college on the college level, I love teaching adults. Um, because I always say if I can impact a mother and a father, then I have impacted future generations, right? And
Yeah,
so
definitely.
yeah. I mean, and then Barbie has been really influential. But sure, Toby Myers, oh my God. She's like every time I'm around Toby, I'm like, oh my God, I just love you. Cause I think she's amazing, and that
She
Toby was
is.
one of those women that stood up before we even had a women's center. And so when my family, when we were going through our turbulent years with my dad, this was in the early 70s. So
Hmm.
there was nowhere we could go other than live with other people at different homes. Uh, and so I think that's, yeah, yeah. I love my students. They really influence me because they always say, thank you, Dr. Badger, for what you're doing. You're really making a difference. And so that just breathes life into me, and yeah.
That's so sweet.
Well, thank you.
I I love instruct when I was in college, my advisor was one of my most influential people in my life. And when we were at the student life banquet, she was talking about how her students were inspiring for her and how, as we grew to be substantial adults, that we showed her that change is possible. And so I love it when instructors and advisors can see that in their students.
So,
So,
what's also interesting is that I will say my daughter and my nieces, they're like the people that pull my coattail. So I guess they're influential, but then they like give me the reality check, like,
yeah.
okay, mommy, okay, so you did that. I'd be like, oh, okay, let me get it together. So I need balance.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, my daughter and
balance
my
is a good
nieces are
thing.
definitely they have no problem pulling my coattail. but then they also raised me up really, really high. They're like, so yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have that balance. Definitely.
And I think the other thing, Rebecca, is that when you have really good intentions and you give off that really good energy, then
Hmm.
good will come to you. I really believe in karma uh, a lot. And so, like, I
Yeah.
remember the first time that I met you, I was like, ooh, I like her. She has great energy. That's what I told Amy later. She was like, oh, Antreece. I was like, she good people.
Yeah, I
Because
love
you
the
have
board
you have
members.
great energy. And that's not to say that nobody said you didn't have it. It's just that I spoke it.
Well, I'm glad that you haven't heard that I have bad energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate everything that you do for our board. I know that our staff members appreciate it. I know that Barbie and Amy definitely appreciate it. Um, and if you're watching out there, we appreciate y'all watching. If you've not seen any more of these board spotlights, please check out them on our website or on our YouTube channel. Our website is hcdvcc.org, and we will see you then.